Hello, everyone, and welcome to another great Portland Cocktail Week session. Thank you, Portland Cocktail Week and Wild Turkey, and of course, Nick Amano-Dolan for being here today and helping continue education during these weird times. For those of you who do not know who I am, my name is JoAnn Street at JoAnn Street on Instagram, and I am a portfolio ambassador for Wild Turkey. I'm very excited to be here today on behalf of Wild Turkey and Portland Cocktail Week to host a super fun session that hopefully kind of gets your brain working a little bit on this Tuesday with Nick about how not to bartend. And also be sure to follow him on Instagram as well at That's the Effing Drink, which absolutely love the Instagram name. Nick, how are you?
I'm doing so good. I'm so good. I'm super excited for this talk.
I'm very excited. We got to chat a little bit earlier, so I'm super excited for you all to get to kind of experience this as well this afternoon. But before we jump into class today, I did want to talk a little bit about Wild Turkey. As you can see, these wonderful products sitting in front of Nick here. What are you sipping on over there right now?
I'm sipping on this single barrel. Luckily, when we set this up, we have a pretty good selection of Russell's Reserve and Wild Turkey, and I figured I'd treat myself to the single barrel for the presentation.
Absolutely. So. Cheers. And so for those of you who don't know, drinking Russells, I'm also part of the Russell family. And as we talk today about how not to bartend, I think this ties in really nicely with our family and kind of what we do at Wild Turkey. We're very passionate about our brand. I'm sure if you've ever heard myself, Eddie Russell, Jimmy Russell, Bruce, my cousin ever talk about the brand, you guys can really tell how passionate we are about that. We also have passions outside of Wild Turkey as well, which is kind of the best part about what we get to do in the industry. A lot of people don't know, for example, that Jimmy, outside of Wild Turkey, crazy to think because he has been there for so long, he was a really great gardener, and that was kind of his escape out of the industry. And so he had the most beautiful rose garden outside of his house, and there's still some that grow there today. But that was kind of his way, I guess you could say, of how not to bartend and how to find that new hobby maybe outside of work where we go to every single day. One other thing that I wanted to mention is that next week we'll be hosting our first ever virtual Behind the Barrel. We decided to go online. So next week, October 19th through the 22nd, we will be hosting multiple different sessions with talk about Wild Turkey history, production, trivia, and more. So please join myself, the Russells, and Benny Hurwitz as we bring Turkey and continue to you virtually next week. You guys can sign up at virtualbehindthebarrel.splashthat.com. We hope you join us. We've got some really exciting things coming up next week for you all. But now to move on to the main event, why we are here this afternoon. I have the wonderful Nick Amano-Dolan from Sacramento, California, who I'm very excited to be here with. How are things on the West Coast?
You know, I think they're COVID good. I mean, I guess there's like a good term I like things in general, especially in Sacramento. I think everyone's getting to a point of really good resiliency. It's almost, there's been so many different things kind of thrown at everyone in the West Coast and Northern California. We've also dealt with some fires and crazy heat and things like that. But the cool thing now is, I mean, everyone's getting really thick skin and just like so just like ready to just adapt and shift. And it's like, what's the next thing? We're gonna like work through it and just keep going on. So it's cool. It's cool to see like a lot of adjustments that are being made out here. I think in Sacramento, particularly like Trevor Easter and the Snug, what they've been able to do over there consistently, that I also kind of moonlight and bartend over there as well, with outdoor bar seating and whatnot, and setting a lot of trends for some really cool stuff. So things are crazy right now, right? Things are different. The world is different, but there's a lot of fun, interesting changes that I think are for the better and hopefully will stick.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that leads in perfectly. I'm going to give you a little bit more information on Nick here, but he is a man of many coats that I've learned. But he is currently earning his sushi coat. I think you called yourself a sushi back in the Instagram live a little bit earlier. Everybody loved that. Thought that was super, super genius. But and when he's not in the kitchen, you can find him endurance training or getting outside of maybe being behind that bar. I mean, he's going to help us all understand how not to bartend. So during our time today, he's going to talk on all the things outside of bartending that he believes help when you are behind the stick. While many people have gotten creative inside their bars and restaurants during these times, today we'll be focusing on ways to get creative outside of the bar with hopes that we can bring your newly developed skills when the time is right and safe. Although Nick would be the first to tell you, he is still continuing to learn and grow with a very strong work ethic and passion for the industry. He comes to our session to teach us how not to bartend and maybe get out of our comfort zone. So if you guys do have any questions for him kind of as we go through today, please don't hesitate to put those in the comments. I will gladly relay those to you. But I think I'm going to let the master here today take over.
Nice. Well, thank you for the intro. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I think it's kind of an interesting idea of how this kind of came about when Brittany reached out and asked if I would give a seminar for Portland Cocktail Week in relationship to bartending. I was super excited because I've been watching so many of these, taking diligent notes and really just trying to pay attention and learn. And so I got really excited, but then the first thing I thought was, shoot, like, what am I going to talk about? Like, I'm taking these notes and just having my mind blown. And I'm like, for me, the technical stuff behind the bar, creativity and whatnot, I love that pursuit, but it's definitely not something I feel like at the forefront of or that I can educate necessarily on. I'm still like definitely learning. But one of the things for me, bartending wise, that I think of an advantage I've always had is the pursuits outside as well. And JoAnn, we kind of talked about this a little bit, and we'll dive into it more, but the best bartenders aren't the best bartenders because necessarily what they're doing behind the bar. Like, I'm sure the most memorable bartenders that I've sat in front of, their drinks were good, but their stories were better. And so that kind of ties into essentially what I wanted to talk about today, which was all the things outside of bartending. So we'll kind of start like around the shift, kind of going into this shift, leaving, and then also like days off, and then just kind of as a whole, how we're navigating that. So on the next slide, starting out here, essentially I wanted to start with the takeaway because, I don't know, maybe you jump on this and you're like, this dude's boring and you don't pay attention to it and you don't watch the rest of it. But at least we'll have this moment here where I can talk about, to me, what the most important part is. There's a lot of seminars or lectures and classes that I go to and listen to, and I'm like, that was amazing. And then at the end of it, I'm like, I don't know if there was one point, there's so much. And I'm like, what was my like takeaway? So I wanted to start with the takeaway. And that is, for me, the more you make bartending a piece of a complete life, the better bartender you will be. For me, I think especially like in Japanese culture as well, there's a very much this type of system where you go in, you do a job, and that's all you do, and you just do it till as much as you possibly can, and you stick with one thing. And so I think that was something for me. I found myself, whenever I got into a new passion or pursuit, that was all I did. And I would become totally absorbed in it. And that normally kind of burnt me out kind of pretty quickly on a lot of things because it was all I did. I fully immersed myself in the lifestyle. And I think with bartending with that, I for sure went through that phase where I fell into it, and it was 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All I want to do is bartend. That's absolutely like everything that I wanted to focus on. And now, and again, like having COVID happen and whatnot has been another reminder that the more that I develop myself in other aspects of life, the more I enjoy life and use the connections that bartending kind of allows for us to have. The more that I use that, the stronger and more efficient I can be when I come back to bartending. Now, because of all these other things that I'm doing, when I come in for my shift, I'm that much better because of the experiences I've had, because I'm feeling fresh and ready to go. And yeah, so let's dive into a little bit more. So on the next slide, kind of just diving into what we're talking about. I talked about this a little bit. We'll kind of talk about pre-shift, post-shift, and then getting outside of the bar, things along those lines. And then the big thing at the end is just kind of taking advantage of your networking, because I feel like for me, that's been the key to this like success is hitting those people up that were like, if you ever need or you ever want to try, and like making that phone call, making that text and whatnot. So we'll dive into that as well. First things first though. So on the next slide, I wanted to talk about kind of an ego check. I think this is really, really important because even as I was writing this presentation and like getting this all set up about living a better lifestyle, balancing out your life, I was totally unbalanced. I was like working like crazy, like getting up, going to work, and then getting home, going to bed, starting it all over again. And I felt really, really guilty because I was like, wow, I'm not training. I'm not eating very well right now. I'm not enjoying life outside of it. I'm just working. And so I was like, man, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. But, I think the real aspect to that is that is okay. Like that is part of the journey, is that it's not, and I said it there, consistency is overrated. Resiliency is key. I think for me, it's like, it's all about riding the ebbs and flows, and everything that I talk about today, it's things that I incorporate into my life, but I don't do it all the time. On a good week, like maybe I did it 5 out of 7 days, like a good pre-shift routine, post-shift routine. Some weeks it's like, it's just kind of, wild, wild west, and you just go in, you make things happen, and you just get through it and try to get to the next point where things are a little bit more organized and structured. So as I'm saying anything or going over this today, I definitely don't want to give the illusion that I follow these things all of the time. I think that's key as well. It's like, sometimes it's really good to be structured, balanced, and sometimes it's good to just enjoy yourself and let yourself ride through those ebbs and flows, and don't judge yourself on that. Just because you had a rough day, a rough week, month, or year doesn't mean that you can't wake up the next day and get back on the horse and get back on track. And that is, I think, so much more key to long-term success than actual like consistency. It's your resiliency, your ability to get back on track after, and whatnot. And one of the last things, little notes there, if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. Just something in general I wanted to touch on before going into all of this. I think that's a really important point for kind of measuring success along the ways, whether it's journaling. I have a Whoop strap on here that's really cool, tracks my sleep, doing things along those lines. Throwing that in general, I think that's a really nice thing to have. Whether it's journaling, tracking your progress in some sort of way through a calendar, whatever, is really, really important. It allows you to see, even when you're feeling like, I don't feel like I've gotten that much better. You can kind of look and see, well, I don't know, on this date, a few months ago, like this is my schedule. I'm like, now I'm getting back. Now I'm like, a little more diligent, a little more structured and whatnot. So just kind of an important point as well. If you don't measure it, you can't manage it. Okay, so talking about pre-shift. So going into your shift before for bartending. So one of the important things, and we'll get to the post shift, but your shift starts kind of the night before. So always how you're going to bed and whatnot, the rest that you're getting, that's going to all lead up to kind of the day that you're starting. When I was working at Snug on Fridays and Saturdays, it was an insane bar. I mean, from the moment that we got there till close, it was just mayhem. It was supposed to be like a cozy little nice cocktail bar. We had a drop down disco ball and played like hip hop and like crazy music, and it turned into like just a beast. And so for those shifts, I really, really had to tighten up and make sure that what I did throughout the day was all kind of setting me up to be able to have a good shift. I think in general too, having a good pre-shift and post-shift is really, really helpful because it kind of allows us to enter and exit this bartending world in a little bit more of a structured way. For me, having something like this, a little more structures and routines, allows me to like come into it, do my job, be about it, and then step away and then focus on other things. So one of the things, one of the things before the shifts that I really like to do is this kind of like little hook torture machine on here that you can, it's called a Theracane. You basically take that knob and you just dig it into spots that are really, really, really tight. And so upper back, your traps, things along those lines from shaking, really get beat up your lower back because a lot of us are kind of in bent over positions throughout our shifts. That can get worked too. So having those, that Theracane there is like super beneficial just to kind of work out those knots in those tight spots. Again, like talking about longevity of shifts, having things like along these lines, I think is really, really important just to make sure that we're not breaking our bodies down and we're not, getting, worked. We want to be able to do this for a really long time. So
yeah. And I think if you don't mind, like one point, I think this is like very kind of like needed right now during this time, because I feel like a lot of us may have been out of work for so long and we're just starting to go back to work, or whatever that may be. I think I need that for like my posture as I'm like sitting here trying to stay like sitting straight up. You don't realize how much you work those muscles when you slouch, or you haven't been behind the bar for a little bit, you come home and maybe you're a little bit more sore. So just making sure and reiterating that you're taking yourself before and after your shift, because it's been a long time since a lot of us maybe have been to a bar, worked behind a bar, whatever that may be.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I know I felt it for sure. Like I was like, ooh, I haven't used those muscles in a minute. Yeah. So having all these types of things, again, this is also a moment, like when I'm taking that Theracane and kind of like digging into some tighter muscles, I'm thinking about the shift that I'm planning on having. I'm focusing on my breathing. I'm slowing things down. I'm relaxed. I'm getting myself in the right mindset so that I can go in and have a great shift. And all this stuff compounds, right? So like your end of the night before, hopefully, you got some good sleep, and then you're coming in, and then hopefully you have a good pre-shift before your shift. And then if you have a good shift, then your night routine will go well and you'll get good sleep again. But it's like if you got bad sleep the night before, you come into your shift, you might be like a little hungover or something, you're not feeling great, and then you go into your shift and it's stressful because your brain's not firing the way you want it to, and then you end up drinking again, and it's that cycle. And so I think for me, again, that's kind of why I wanted to dive into pre-shift and post-shift, because I think that's a very difficult cycle for me to kind of break out of a lot of times. And I found that by inputting these routines and structures, that's been the most helpful. A lot of times, like it's very difficult just to stop a habit or a routine that you have. I think for anyone, for me, I know for sure. If I'm just like, okay, I want, to stop drinking so much. Like I can be like, okay, well, I can just tell myself I'm going to stop, or I'm going to input these other habits that are going to push out the ones that I kind of like work away from or balance out a little bit. And so having something where, before your shift, you're going to have a pre-shift with, your Theracane, doing resistance bands, getting some range of motion in and whatnot, and then knowing you're going to have a post-shift and whatnot. Like all of those things just kind of help set it up so that I'm setting myself up for success to like break those habits, build in new ones, push out bad ones. So yeah. So the other piece here, resistance band. I mean, these two tools, if you go, you can find them on Amazon searching Theracane and resistance band. You can see for the resistance bands there's a couple different weight options. You want to get the lightest one possible. And there's going to be essentially one of the best ones you can find. Also, if you go to Equal Parts Project, on Instagram, my friend Lindsay Nader and I made a really funny video talking about a pre-shift warm-up routine. She's a yoga instructor as well. There's a part, it's like a 1-800 scene where I'm doing the Theracane. It's pretty, I'm digging into those tight muscles. But you can see a lot of examples from the pre-shift exercises and routines. Would be like one of the ones with the resistance band being just holding it out in front of you, pulling it apart, again, helping that upper back. That's the part that really gets beat up the most. But again, so just as a whole, starting your shift, making sure you have some sort of routine, and it can be something small. Like every time I go into my shift, I make sure I have, a pint of water first. Like you could just do that first, start there, and then be like, you know what, maybe I'll try a couple stretches. Maybe I'll like roll my neck out, and just start with a little thing, one thing at a time, and then hopefully that compounds and we can add it. But I'm not giving a necessarily specific pre-shift. I'm just saying that it's a good idea to have that for yourself. So whatever works for every individual, I think everyone's different in terms of what makes sense for them. But again, having something along these lines I found is just really, really helpful for me. And then leading to post-shift. So after, on the next slide. Yeah. So after the end of your shift, and this is the part that's, I think, really, really, really key, because for me, a lot of the times, again, when you got beat up, you had a hard night, you're just taking care of everyone else. You're like, I need a drink and I want to treat myself. And it's, very easy at that point to get kind of started in that cycle that allows you to not enjoy other like pleasures or endeavors in life outside of the world of bartending. So one of the big ones, hydrate. None of us drink enough water. Like it's just it's amazing what just hydration will do. There's a really great nutritionist, John Berardi, and his first week with a lot of clients, he talks about what he does at Precision Nutrition. People pay all these kinds of money to get hired on, to get this guy's attention, to get him to write plans for him. And a lot of times he'll say, like the first week, he'll be like, when you wake up in the morning, drink a liter of water. And they're like, okay, cool. And next, and they're like, he's like, no, just do that for a week. Like, just do that. And then people come back and like, oh my God, I feel amazing. And he's like, yeah, water. It's crazy, right? Like it's very, very important. So hydrating at the end of the shift is so key, like just so important.
Mm-hmm.
It seems dumb. I feel ridiculous saying it, like, but it also, it's like, it's true. And it's a good reminder for myself as well. So hydrating, very, very, very important. Leaving your work at the bar. Again, like this is something, having those end of the night talks with your staff about, you know, how the night went, what you can improve on, what was difficult, all those things. Like it's so important to leave that there. And then whether you get in your car, you get on a bike, you walk home, whatever, just making sure that you have that time to separate and to be like, okay, that was work. That was cool. I did that, or that wasn't so great. I'm going to step away now and move into, whatever else it is. So along with this, I think treating yourself too, like for me at the end of the night, like if I'm like, okay, you know, I had a great shift, I kind of want to go home now. A lot of times, like maybe I'll have like a nice nightcap. Maybe I'll pour myself a single barrel of Jimmy's Whistle Reserve. Like I want to enjoy that. I want to have a moment where I do something for myself. I think that's so important. If we're doing our jobs right, it's all about everyone else besides us. So at the end of the night, I always want to make sure I do one thing that I'm like, this is for me. And like I love dark chocolate. I'm gonna have like some dark chocolate. I'm a big popcorn fan, so I'll have like a bag of popcorn. Or again, like Jimmy's, I'm something for me. I'm like, this is for no one else. I'm just having like, I'm treating myself. And then with that, kind of a good follow-up, I think, is a different kind of nightcap. So like a lot of times I'll treat myself to like one drink. Like I'll have a glass of wine, you know, a German whiskey, something along those lines. And then one of like the best secret weapons I've had, because I've talked to so many bartenders, and ending the shift and how they get to bed is so difficult. Your mind is just constantly firing. And somehow at 4 o'clock in the morning, you're like, I cannot go to bed. Well, I found that this tea right here, Yogi Soothing Caramel Bedtime, which sounds like, it's such a, I don't know, it sounds like a live, laugh, love, like kind of tea. But it's amazing. A lot of times, Tim Ferriss was, who is a very great mind, who's written a bunch of books that sound like infomercials for our work week, for our chef and whatnot. He is the one that recommended, I was watching an interview on him. He recommended this tea and talked about how, but before you kind of get to the end of the cup, like you find yourself like already kind of nodding off and ready for bed. And I find that it is very, very, very true. So having something like this, at the end of the night for me. And then also it's like, I don't know, it's just the habit of having a nightcap at the end of the night. Like, it's just, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, you just want that last little like thing. And so replacing it with a tea like this, I think is like, I don't know, for me, it's super, super, super helpful. Novels over Netflix. Another thing, at the end of the night, I get caught up in a trap of watching. There's too many good shows on Netflix. Like, don't even do it to yourself. Like, don't open it up. You can't, right? Because you go on there and you're
it's like one more episode. And then you look up and it's like 3 a.m. and now you've lost like half a night's sleep. I'm personally not someone who like can sleep till noon. I like feel like my day is wasted. Like even if I go to bed later at night, you know? So I think everyone during quarantine is guilty on this in some type of level of just kind of wormholing, I call it, into Netflix or into Facebook or into something that you just like can't necessarily like put down.
Yeah. I mean, now having like the phones have the time limits that you can set on them. I need to figure out how to do that. I need to figure out, it's like kind of crazy to like see those numbers. You're like,
it's very eye-opening. Yeah, it's very eye-opening, but I agree, because I think at the end of the night, you know, you're already probably pretty worked up from your shift. You know, you've got all this energy. You need to find a way to relax a little bit. I'm also a big advocate for tea. I'm not a really big coffee drinker, so I'm all for some hot tea, morning, night, midday. I think that's a great point to put out, because I've also used like sleepy time tea or just something to like really help you relax at the end of a long day or a long week, whatever that may be.
Yeah. And again, like we're beverage professionals, right? Like a lot of us deal in like liquid beverages and whatnot. And so there's like an interesting rabbit hole you can go down with just the idea of tea. Here at Crew, we have a pretty cool tea program, Leaves and Flowers, out of Oakland. we source from them, and they have like some great options. And it's like, for me, obviously this is the Yogi Soothing Caramel Bedtime Tea. Like the ceremony, that's not like for a tea expert. They're like, whatever, dude. But I think in general, like, it's just another thing to be like fascinated and interested by, that takes you away from like, okay, there's different kinds of beverages. It doesn't all, I mean, this stuff is great, but also like other things as well.
Right.
Really, really good just to kind of balance that in there. The last couple points on the slide, cold showers. I'm a big fan of it. Have you ever tried doing like any sort of cold shower? Have you done any cold plunges before, JoAnn?
Yeah, I have. So I was actually a college athlete once upon a time, a very long time ago. I feel like my body definitely cannot handle playing soccer as hard as I did one time, but we would take cold baths after every single practice. And then that kind of has led into me even like, whether it be after like a long night of work or even like the next morning, to really kind of like wake me up. It's been really, really nice, because I feel like you sleep so much better, you know, when you take a shower and then you go to bed. You feel a little bit more relaxed. You've had some time to get your mind off things and whatnot.
Oh yeah. It's totally, like, for me, it's the one thing that I now look forward to it. I do it basically every single night. As long as I have like a cold shower available, I look forward to it now, but it was the worst. Like, I would dread it. I would think about it. It would start getting to the end of my shift, and I'd be like, I told myself I was going to do it. It's going to be so cold. Like, it's so uncomfortable for those 20 seconds. The benefits that you get afterwards are insane. Like, if you're having trouble as a bartender sleeping, ending your night, like, if you do the bedtime tea and like do a cold shower and then do the bedtime tea, like, if you're not passing out super quickly after, I mean, hit me up, let me know, because I'm interested in how that did not work, because that stuff knocks me out like cold. Like, it's so good. There's a really cool guy, Wim Hof. They call him the Iceman. There's a bunch of crazy documentaries. This guy's like breaking all kinds of records, swimming underwater in like shorts. He like climbed Mount Everest in shorts and stuff, and it's like really diving in the forefront of cold exposure and what it can do. I mean, the benefits that they've shown are absolutely amazing. And we have access to it in just doing something as simple as like a 20-second cold shower. I mean, the impact that it can have on your body is pretty amazing. So yeah, that kind of stamp. And again, those are my routine. This is what I like to do. I definitely highly suggest a few of these points, but I think, again, having a routine, having a structure, a way that you're like, this is how I end my night, is so important. And it's really like one of the biggest keys, I think, in keeping me balanced again. So kind of what I'm talking about, how to not bartend, that's really only possible, I think, if I structure good settings around my shift. And so these are a couple of ways that I like to do it. So yeah.
I was gonna say one more thing too, is that when you do get into that routine, your body almost knows, I feel like too. It's like, okay, like, I'm doing these things, like, I'm slowly starting to get ready for bed or my post shift or whatever that may be in your day, depending on how late you're at work or whatever that is, you know. I think you're like mentally and physically kind of preparing yourself to lay down and rest once you do get into that routine as well. Yeah,
no, absolutely. Yeah. Your body starts, it has that clock. It has that clock. So it starts like going, be like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing.
Yep.
Totally. So yeah, a couple different tools in and outside of the bar, or, you know, before and after the bar shifts that can hopefully allow you to do other things. Because again, I don't think you can, it's very difficult to have other time in the day to do anything if you're not a little bit structured about the way that you do that. I think it's super helpful. And so kind of talking about using those, kind of talking about in general life outside of the bar. So obviously the bars got taken away from all of us, from every single one of us at the beginning of this year. And it was a scary time and it was crazy. And I think a lot of the things I'm going to talk about here that I've kind of started to cope and deal and try to adjust to all these things. I definitely don't want to leave out the fact that intermixed through between all of this was definitely like, you know, anxiety, fighting panic attacks, and just sadness. I mean, we talked about, you know, there's still days, weeks where you wake up and you're like, I don't want to do anything. Yeah. And that's okay. That, you know, I think that's totally fine. The idea that you're going to wake up every single morning ready to go and just like taking on a new task. I mean, if you're like that, I mean, maybe Dwayne Johnson is probably the only guy that's like like that. They're like Kevin Hart. Those guys like just constantly seem like they're just go, 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 go.
Right.
I think it's a little more healthy if you have some sort of balance, take on certain weeks or months where like you're a beast, you're getting everything done and you're just, you're shining, and then allow yourself to have the time too, where it's like, you know what, I'm just gonna be kind of sad and chill and do nothing. And that's okay. That allows you, I think, to balance it all out. And so I had a friend one time tell me, he's like, yeah, I like to sit in that. And I was like, that's weird. He's like, no, I just like to really sit in those moments and just feel it and really acknowledge the way that you feel in those moments of like, I'm sad, and that's okay. And I think allowing yourself to have that makes you more appreciative of the times than when you are like, you feel like you're killing it. You're just going and going with everything. So after COVID started, we're trying to figure out what we're doing, and I'm sitting and I'm hanging out with my friends, Trevor Easter and Lindsay Nader, who opened up Snug, and then two of my other friends, Marcus and Jamie Meisler. And we're all kind of like sitting, trying to figure out like, oh, what do we do? And we're like, well, we have like 3 bartenders, operators, owners, and we have 2, my friend Jamie, who's in marketing and has been involved in marketing, and Marcus, who's an insanely talented videographer and photographer. And we're like, let's just start shooting videos. And I mean, the first ones that we did, it was literally, we're just in their apartment, and Marcus has like an amazing setup and makes us all look like way better than we do than we do in real life. But he just starts taking videos. And it was, the first one was actually like with Campari. And we were just like Lindsay just picked up a bottle and starts talking about all the things you can do with Campari. And then Marcus cuts it up, makes a really cool video. And we were like, oh, sweet. And so we started just doing that, and we didn't really exactly know what we were doing. We were just like, let's create really fun content for the bar, for the people in this industry, and just kind of see where it goes. And before we knew it, we were hitting up some brands and talking to different people and whatnot. And it was a viable kind of creative media agency that we started. So that was really, really cool. It still kind of kept us like our minds kind of going with bartending and still being able to be creative and doing different things. And so that was a really nice thing that kind of started in the beginning. From there, kind of as I'm coming out, I'm like, all right, that was cool. Like, I'm starting to feel better these days. I can do some more these days, and started getting back into my trail running. A buddy just started hitting me up, and we just went out. We're running trails, and we're doing 10 miles a day. It just became kind of a regular habit. I'm buying a new bicycle because my friends convinced me to, and I bought a bike. And then suddenly we're doing open water swimming. I'm a mile out into open water, like being like, what the heck is going on? I don't know what I'm doing. And suddenly I'm like, oh, I'm training for a triathlon. And all of those things happened just because I said yes. Like, because when my friends, you want to go do that? Yep. You want to go, hey, let's try this new thing. Yes, let's do it. And I constantly was just like throwing things at the wall. Again, moving into, I started working as a farmhand. My friend had started a farm and was like, can you come out and help? Yep, sure can. And so all of these things kind of just started because I was just throwing things at the wall, and I wasn't thinking about it too much. I think often with a lot of like new pursuits and endeavors, the more we think about it, the more like we start thinking, fear can kind of set in, and we start worrying, what if I'm not good at it? What if it's scary and whatnot? I mean, literally the open water swimming, it was actually it was kind of scary, actually. I'm swimming with my friend who's from Hawaii. Like, he's a waterman from Hawaii. Very good swimmer, just very comfortable in the water. And we're going out for a swim, and I was like, yeah, cool. I'm kind of thinking we're going to swim along like the shore, and it'll be like, a nice little swim.
You go straight out?
Yeah. Oh, we went straight out. I was like, he's like, yeah, we're going straight out. I was just like, okay. And we're about 5 minutes out there swimming. And I'm like, okay, man, I think it's good. It's cool. And he's like, nope. He goes, no, you got to push past that mental block. And I've been like, okay, I'm all about that mindset. Like, that when it's uncomfortable, that's when the growth happens. Like, I need to push past that. So we start going a little bit further and further. And in my mind, I start thinking, I've never swam with this guy before. He doesn't know how strong of a swimmer I am. And he has a stress fracture in his femur right now from running because he pushes himself so hard. Why am I listening to him about how far I can swim out? And so we get out about another 5 minutes, and I'm like, okay, that's it. Like, I'm done. I'm good. Like, I'm going back. And I swear, when I hit the land, it was just like the most, I felt like high. Like, it was just like, oh my God, I'm back on earth. Like, this is amazing.
Right.
And I think that idea in general, like, again, that's just kind of a cool metaphor, just kind of correlation of how these things work, trying new things out. If you just don't think about it too much, go and try something. If it's exciting to you and it gets you like, ooh, energized, like just go do it. Don't think about it too much. And a lot of times it's going to be scary. You're going to push past it. And then you get to this point after where you're like, I feel amazing. Like, I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know, like, I feel uncomfortable on a farm. I don't really know what I'm doing out there. And you know what, like, it's like, I wish I could say more that like, I felt like a manlier man about like having a shovel or repairing or fixing things. I don't. I'm totally uncomfortable. So being out there and getting to do all that, you know, just going for it, then afterwards you get, again, this feeling of like, whoa, I didn't know I had that in me. And again, now at this time, and I know as we're kind of transitioning back into bars in different states, and it's working differently everywhere, but we all still have this time. We all still have a lot of extra time on our hands to potentially be doing other pursuits. So all those things in your mind that said, oh, I would have, or like, if I wasn't doing this, I might do that. Like, do it. Now is the time to do all of those things. And again, I think you not thinking about it too much, throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall. Am I going to go work as a farmhand like permanently? No, but I did take sushi classes and started working as a sushi chef. And this is now kind of turning into like a full-fledged pursuit and potential career, kind of alongside bartending. The sushi stuff in particular for me, I think was the most interesting, and it happened because of, and I think hopping into the next slide here, actually, it happened because of me taking advantage of my network. And I think that is something that's so huge. It's one of the biggest assets that we have as bartenders, and as hospitality professionals. You know more people in your town probably than any other people do in the town, and any other profession. We're all constantly sitting behind bars, and we get, you know, flocks of people coming in. We've all made crazy relationships with people that I know have told you, you know, like, hey, if you ever need, or if you ever wanted to try out, or have you ever thought about, now is the time to take advantage of those networks. That's the effing drink happened because it was two friends that I met that sat at my bar and now became two of my best friends. And that started there. When I was looking for like a personal training certification, kind of what to do there, I started hitting up friends that I'd met of gym owners that came into the bar, and I knew them because of that. The current job I have as a sushi chef, alongside consulting for the bar program over here, I was the bar manager here for 2 years. I would have never been allowed behind a sushi bar if the owner, Bill, didn't know me already. I mean, like, my first day, I mean, the goal was just don't cut myself on the first day. But when I came in for like a stage shift, they were like, oh, okay. All right, we'll give it a shot. And this would have never happened if I didn't know them through bartending. And so, you know, I think right now that's such an important thing, is pick up that phone and reach out to the people that have pursuits that you potentially want to follow. Taking advantage of that network, I think, is so important. And it's helped me in so many different aspects. Like, looking at it here, I got a huge discount on my bike, the cycling bike, because of, again, friends that came into the bar. And so, you know, for me, again, I think a huge piece of advice is reach out. I think oftentimes, I know I do have a hard time of like asking for favors or, you know, asking anything from anyone, honestly. And as hospitality professionals, I think a lot of us probably share that characteristic where we're constantly caretakers, and then we're not really good at people taking care of us. Now's the time to be taken care of. Now's the time to be like, ask for help, reach out, hit someone up and say, you know, hey, I've been looking to get into this, and I know that's your field you're involved in. Can you point me in the right direction? I mean, I think it's so important to be asking those questions.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of like the best parts about our industry is, especially for someone who hasn't come from behind the bar, it's always been so welcoming and inviting, and you know, everyone kind of takes care of their own. And I think that's one of the best parts about what we get to do on a daily basis, is knowing at the end of the day, someone always has your back. And even with everything that you've been saying today, like knowing that you may be like having a hard time getting out of that comfort zone, but there are a lot of other people out there like you are too, you know, because this is a very odd time, and we have had to kind of pivot maybe what we expected this year was going to look like, which is exciting and terrifying, and who knows what's next, but hopefully only good things to come, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And now again, I think now is just the perfect time to try new stuff out. And for me, it's I always get nervous about trying something new because I'm like, well, you just overthink it and think about it too much. But really, right now, it's like my list is so long of new things that I'm getting into, and I keep like trying. Liz asked me in the Instagram live we did before this, she was like, so what's the next thing? And I was like, and then I knew me. I was like, oh, windsurfing. I really want to get into windsurfing because one of the guests came in that I talk about endurance sports all the time. And we were chatting and she was like, yeah, cool. You're doing open water swimming. That stuff's all fun. Have you heard about windsurfing? We have a really good one. We have a really good spot to go in the Delta right around here. And I'm like, all right, cool. Let's try it out. And I'm not going to become a professional windsurfer. We'll see where that's the effing drink go. I love that project and whatnot, all these different things, but it's not necessarily worried about the end. It's just now. Like I'm just doing it now because it's fun and it's different and it keeps my brain excited. Because right now, I mean, at least when we bartend here, there's a glass screen in front of us. There's no guest there. So it's like, all right, I got to figure out something like to keep my mind going and keeping me entertained.
I totally agree because sometimes even now, whenever I do safely get to go out, it's like, okay, well, you can sit at a table and it's kind of like, all right, well, I kind of miss that comfort of just like having that conversation with the bartender or sitting at that bar. You know, you definitely miss that. And that's been an uncomfortable change too, is kind of learning how to cope with everything that's happening. But I definitely agree. I miss sitting on the other side of the bar from you very, very much. I think we all do at this point.
Yeah. And so I think, kind of gearing up for whenever we are allowed that experience again, because we will. And, this too shall pass. And we'll have that moment where we do get to have guests at our bar again. I want to make sure that my time right now is not for nothing. I want to make sure that I can still live my life. So whenever we do get to go back, we're going to need as an industry a catapult to like push us forward because we're kind of losing time right now in a lot of ways, right? There's a lot of things. I know cities developing new bar openings and whatnot. Now things are put on hold. And so when we get back to it, I mean, we're all going to need to come correct and be able to like really push our industry forward. And so for me, all of these different things are ways to do that. For me, it's like now really diving into the endurance sports. There's no Friday and Saturday night shift that's going to be as tough as running, 13 miles after I just biked 57. Like there's nothing that's going to be as difficult as that. Like I feel like in my brain. And now I'm learning how to take care of my knives and sharpen my knives and my garnishing, and it is all getting better because of the sushi chef position. And so like all of these things are now coming into play and allowing me to do that. Kind of moving into the last slide and like kind of wrapping up and like what makes a good bartender. Again, this is something we hear a lot. People visit bartenders, not bars. And again, like the idea that I really liked was, bartenders are storytellers. And so we better have some good stories to tell. We should be trying to build stories right now. And that to me is by continuing growth, continuing learning other pursuits and passions and growing so that when we come back, now we have all these added skills that we can bring to the table to, again, catapult our industry forward. And whether it's like, you're taking online marketing classes and now you can come back and you can run the marketing department for your bar, or, you really got into printing or woodworking and now you're building tools for everything. I mean, there's so many, the list is never ending. And so I think the more that all of us individually can go out, learn new skills, pursue other passions, that will only make us stronger for when we come back behind the bar. And then we get to again, come back with one, great stories to tell our guests about like, oh, how did you survive 2020? And two, we have all these new skills now. We have a wider repertoire of talents and whatnot that we can bring to the table to help us move forward. And so I think again, like it's just this is the time to take advantage of all that and learn other new pursuits, get in as passionate as you are about bartending. And if you're watching something like this, then you probably are really passionate. You're like at the upper echelon of cocktail nerd or like bartender nerd, which like I feel grateful to be. I feel a part of that category as well. But if you're watching this, then you're not getting to pursue a passion that is probably something that might maybe defined you, maybe not defined you, but was just a huge way that you identified. And having something like that taken away is really, really tough. And so, I think it was really interesting. Michael Phelps, I remember they had a conversation with him after he was done swimming. They're like, well, what are you going to do now? And he's like, I'm going to take the same mindset that let me be, 8-time gold medalist swimmer. And I'm just going to push that into something else. If you're paying attention, you're watching this video and you've constantly been trying to still learn and whatnot, then you have a mindset behind the bar that is so passionate, so hardworking. There's no reason in the world that you cannot take that and put it into another avenue, put it into another career, passion, something, and succeed in that as well. And then bring that again back to the bar so that we can all just keep this train going like as strong as we can.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's been really exciting for me, and thank goodness for social media, and things like Portland Cocktail Week or the Campari community. It's been really nice to be able to maintain those relationships with friends from all over, but also really kind of getting to know others and what their hobbies are outside of just going to a bar and having a drink, because on my side of work, a lot of those times I'm on the other side of the bar and visiting you, but it's also nice to get to know people outside of just being behind that bar as well.
No, absolutely.
All right. Well, it looks like we have one question. I think we did catch someone's attention when we were talking about your tea program. So where and who in Oakland do you source it from, if you know?
Yeah. So the company is called Leaves and Flowers. Oh, Jack, nice. The company's called Leaves and Flowers, and they have an incredible tea program. Another one that we used at the Snug a lot that was also really good was August Uncommon. Not related to what I was talking about at all, but honestly, it's a great tool just to enhance doing tea infusions and cocktails. I mean, it's such a good way to add complexity to a cocktail without having to do too much crazy work.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we're all looking for the difficult thing to do, I made my own orgeat and things like that. And that's cool. I love that stuff, but it's also really nice to be able to have hacks and tricks as well. Take August Uncommon and look through their tea catalog. And I mean, there's a million, you can just make a Manhattan and put the tea infused in there and it's going to be delicious. But yeah, Leaves and Flowers out of Oakland. I don't know where specifically are. I know that they do have a storefront, but you can hit them up online and they have a really good catalog, and their sourcing practices are really, really great as well for everything that they get. Just again, any other beverage, there's a deep history in terms of the sourcing and sustainability practices and all those types of things. And Leaves and Flowers, from people that are much smarter than me with when it comes to tea, tell me they have good practices.
I believe that for sure. Well, if you guys do have any more questions, just drop those down in the comments. We'll make sure that Nick can get those answered for you all. If you want to see more distance learning classes like this one, make sure that you guys are following Portland Cocktail Week on Facebook. As you know, they've been kind of at it for a little while, doing classes all throughout the week. New classes on weekdays, and then also an archive of past classes in the video tab here. Don't forget about Instagram as well. Like I was talking about, I think all of us kind of live on social media a little bit these days. They are also on Instagram, so you can find out what's coming up next. Also, they have created a YouTube channel for folks that are not on Facebook, so make sure you check that out as well. And then, of course, on my end, please make sure that you give Campari community a follow. We love getting to work with Portland Cocktail Week, as well as putting out a lot of other really great content. So just make sure that you guys are staying active there. We miss you. We can't wait to see you again. Nick, I think that you've done an incredible job this afternoon of kind of reminding us of that work-life balance. And it's okay to have a work-life balance. I think this time has really forced all of us to find that hobby or maybe that uncomfortable hobby that we want to try because of the situation that we're in this odd time. But I think it's been a lot of people in a really great way. Obviously, we can see what it's done for you. Just getting yourself out there, making yourself a little bit uncomfortable. Nick, I want to say thank you so much again. Make sure you guys give us a follow on social media. Thank you again, Portland Cocktail Week and Wild Turkey for having us. But we will talk again soon. Nick, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Enjoy that Russell's. I'll talk to you soon.
Cheers. Thank you so much.